hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Plain Talking UK podcast. Excuse me, my name's Neville Bounds and it's episode 329. We've got a very exciting show this week, but unfortunately there's sad news as it's announced that the Queen of the Skies production line is officially retired, and there's a glimpse into the post-pandemic world for business class. In the military segment, the United States Air Force intercepts an Iranian passenger jet, and more countries join Britain to make the next generation Tempest fighter. We talked to Jack about his amazing achievement in the world of flying, and in the latest Plane Truths, Captain Al talks bomb threats. Well, joining me in this, joining me over in the PTU UK studio is Matt Smith.
Well, hello everyone. Hello. It's we're a bit light today, aren't we, mate?
Yes, there's been lots of last-minute faffing about, changes of personnel, content, you name it. We are expecting an appearance from Carlos at some point during the show, and if we can make it, that would be great. So look forward to seeing him. So, what have you been up to this week, Matt?
Me? Well, I just the same thing really. Sort of still on furlough with the coach company, so I'm still working for a company called Naked Wines, just basically sort of working in their delivery team, dealing with bits and pieces like that. So still there, still doing that. Really enjoying it actually. I had no idea that working delivery could be so interesting. It's a surprise for you. Absolutely. Yeah. I must admit, I don't know quite what's happened, because so many of my friends have sort of managed like the target. I don't know whether it's just because I've joined them that suddenly all of my friends are getting like targeted ads as a result. I don't know quite. I keep getting messages from people saying I keep getting these adverts. What's that all about? It's not my fault, I promise.
There we
are. What about you, Nev? What have you been up to this week?
Been working this week, so we're all back at work full time as of Monday of this week, which was great. So I did a bit of flying yesterday and today, so went up to Newcastle and back from Heathrow with the British Airways boys, obviously. We'll talk about that a bit later on, because there's some quite major changes at Heathrow compared to when I did my last Nev's passenger experience, so quite a lot happening there. So so that was all good stuff. And but yes, when I arrived back it was 36 degrees Celsius.
I know, it's been a warm day today, hasn't it? It
certainly
has. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got a special guest with us, so I suppose we ought to introduce him, really.
Please do.
Indeed. So some of you may remember from last week, there was a young lad who basically became Britain's youngest qualified pilot. And as he's a local lad to us and he's a very nice chap, we sent him a message and here he is now. So hello, Jack. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
So we're going to have a little chat with you, if we may, because as I say, this is an incredible achievement to have done it. Well, let's start with the obvious one. So obviously there's clearly a passion/interest in flying there for you. So, I mean, how did this all come about?
So when I was about 2 years old, I went to Claxton Air Show, I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw my first Red Arrows display. And I think from there, I got hooked.
Oh.
And since there, just aviation has grown. And since being in Burston, there's Norfolk Gliding Club at Tippin Airfield. And off a certain runway, the tug and glider combination fly over my house. And I was seeing it and I thought, you know what, I'd love to give that a go. And I turned up. It was a January day. It wasn't very nice, and they cancelled flying. But I went to turn up, and then I got all the information I needed. Then I got put on a friends and family from one of the members at the club, one of the instructors. And then it just grew from there, and I've progressed through flying from the age of 11, and now on to the age of 14, I've flew solo.
Wow. So, I mean, there's so many questions here really to start with. So, I mean, the age thing obviously is, I guess, a subject that's a sort of difficult one, I suppose. So, I mean, what sort of challenges does that bring, obviously, when it comes to learning to fly?
So, with the age thing, because I started at 11, so from the age, when I was about 13, I started to get to sort of expectation. And about 5-6 months later, I was solo ready. but because of the age, I had to wait. So the gliding club got worried that I was going to get bored, which obviously wasn't because it's flying. So flying's amazing.
Quite, yeah.
But they started to put new things towards me. So one of the main things was aerobatics, which is really fun. And I did that, which was amazing. And I want to progress to do that now. And that's probably what's the next thing going to be, trying to be one of the youngest pilots in the UK to do aerobatics and compete and do air shows.
My goodness. I mean, it's just like, I mean, Nev, obviously, do take some of the questions here.
Yes, well, I'm not an aerobatic kind of chap. I'm more of a straight and level fellow with me gin and tonic, you know. Yeah, it was fantastic. So can you tell us a bit about the junior training scheme at the Norfolk Gliding Kart Club where you were?
Yeah, so it's £46 per month, which includes 60 flights a year, which doesn't seem a lot, but it is actually, because each time you go, you're able to fly twice, and each flight you get up to half an hour free, and once you go over the half an hour, you pay from the 0 mark, which is for a 2-seater is probably about 50p a minute, I think it is. And you can go you can go there 5 times a month to fly, but as many times as you want to go and help.
So, I mean,
yeah. Tell you what, I was just interested because those sort of sums of money, I mean, that's quite manageable, isn't it, compared to the cost of starting to a PPL in a fixed wing powered aircraft. So if they're talking about those sorts of figures, then that's a great incentive to start, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah, and it's completely affordable. And I think what the good thing is as well is that the gliding club's a community, so everyone chips in. And unlike a flying school, that you only really tend to meet your instructor, maybe a couple of other people who are learning and flying. It's a whole community, so you get to meet everyone and then learn the skills of ground handling, how gliders work, how to fix them, and then to rig and de-rig. So if a glider lands out in a field, which is very normal, we have like a trailer which we can take the wings off, the tailplane off, and then we'll push it in, and we learn how to do that and all the basic ground handling.
That's fantastic. And also, of course, if you want to go on to, Piper or Cessna or whatever afterwards, having that grounding in gliding is fantastically important, isn't it? So it's a great opportunity. Yeah.
Good. I think adding to getting onto the PPL, the gliding part, you're learning about the basic flying skills, and then if you want to move on to the PPL, you only have to learn about the engine management, which I think is a very good way of learning how to start to fly.
Yeah, indeed. I'm gonna bring your mum in on this one actually, because I mean, this is quite a decision to make, really. I suppose from there. So the lovely that everyone is here as well. Now, obviously, he's been clearly obsessed with aviation from almost birth. I mean, how did it make you feel? I mean, because it's like. These things always entail risks, I suppose, and there is that sort of alarm bell as a mum that sort of kicks in.
Absolutely, and I think right from the start. I mean, we went to inquire at the club. He was just over 11, and they really liked him, and he was young for them to take, but they did like a safeguarding thing and made me feel really reassured about it. And basically, and I did do that old kind of thing, but you're only 11 and you're going up there in a plane, and this could crash, you can't, or like freaking out. And he just said, look, Mum, I'm just going to do it, so you're just going to have to be okay with it. And he's absolutely right, and we're so from, I'm hard-working, single-parent family, this sort of thing, you'd think, there's no way he could learn to fly, where am I going to fund that? But actually, with the scheme and everything, it's really affordable. And they're very professional, but they're so kind of like laid back. There's no, he is doing something really dangerous. I mean, obviously he is, but they just put you at ease. And
I suppose it's all about managed. It's all about managed risk, I suppose, as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
and also very often the most dangerous part is the journey to the airfield, isn't it?
Exactly. And I thought that as well. I thought he could take up any hobby. It could be motorbikes, quad bikes, go-karts, boats, anything like that. Anything's got even the BMXs and stuff like that. But actually what he does, accident for accident, is probably there aren't any. So
it's also it's extremely well regulated, and the training's first class as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And the first time I saw him go up, I was like complete bag of nerves, and I just used to drop him off because I couldn't bear to stay there, and I'd just be like, thank God I can go and pick him up, I've got the call. And then it's just got better and better, and obviously seeing him do his solo, I went right back to that moment of when I first left him there, and I was literally heart in my mouth and wanted to pass out. And then, he's got it. They've all had faith in him doing it. They've been saying he's been able to go solo expectation for about 8 months or so now. So, yeah, I feel okay because he's good at it, and and they all believe in him. So this is his dream, and he's got to live it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's a lovely way to sort of look at it, really. And you're a very lucky boy, Jack. I have to be honest, because I don't know many mums that would be quite so supportive when it comes to something like that.
We're quite kind of like seize the day adventure type people, go with what the day brings, and that's all part of it. So. And and he wants to be an airline pilot when he's older. That's his career path. So great, he learns how to fly now. Fantastic.
Absolutely. In fact, actually, somebody in the chat room here has sort of more or less asked that question to you, Jack, saying, "What's Jack's final goal with flying?" That's from Katie Finch.
Yeah, going into the commercial flying will be the final goal, but I think we being outside the commercial flying part, I want to do aerobatic competitions again, not with the straight and level. I'm kind of like I seek adrenaline in a way. Like I love the adrenaline side of things, and the excitement things. Like not the stuff which would necessarily like kill me. It's the stuff.
Say that out loud.
It's the stuff that would like.
Same.
Yeah. Well, it's the stuff which would realise, okay, that's a very cool sport, and it's not an everyday sport as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an unusual hobby, isn't it? So while we're doing the questions from the chat room here, so Tony S is just saying, Jack, what do your school friends think of your achievement? Is it cool or geeky to be a young glider pilot? I think it's cool, by the way. So
yeah, a lot of my friends are very supportive, actually. I think I posted that I'm going on here on my Instagram a couple of minutes ago, and I think a couple of my friends are watching.
Oh.
So if so, hi. And
hi,
yeah,
oh no, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, but they think it's very cool. Some of them aren't too keen on flying, but they are supportive. Some of them don't trust it because I showed them that, well, the gliders are held together by wing roots and everything, but there's a gap which we cover by tape, and they think gliders are held together by tape, which they're not. And some of them don't get the concept of gliders being able to fly without an engine, and I think there has to be wind for a glider to go, but it's the combination of a wing working.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, it's one more question actually from the chat room again here, as this is coming from Stephen H. Is saying, like, has Mum flown with you yet, Jack, or will she do so when you've got your rating?
Well, she's flown in a Grob 109 most glider with a qualified instructor, but she once I get my passenger rating or basic instructor rating, I will definitely take her up. But I've got to get 50 hours solo and B16. And my mum is terrified, literally terrified to go up, but I'm going to force her.
Yeah. Literally, that's the one last thing. Like in the whole, to complete it, I have to let him fly me, and then that's it. That's the last pressure.
No, absolutely. Well, I see that we've just been joined by our illustrious leader. He's finally finished work and has joined us. Hello, Carlos.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hello. Welcome to me. Welcome to everyone.
Yeah,
I thought I'd join you now.
That's good of you. Go on, Ed. You might ask a question to Jack then, please.
Well, I just want to say thanks, Jack, for agreeing to come on the show. Yes, lovely to see you on here, and well done on your achievement. Absolutely fantastic. Actually, one of the questions I was going to ask you, Jack, was one of the very fond memories I have on one of my first solo flights that I'd done in the 150 was being in the air at the same time as a Chinook. Now, obviously, we're lucky in the east of England here. We've got Chinooks and Ospreys and everything flying around, especially this week. It's been really busy for military stuff. Is there anything that you've seen from your cockpit as such when you've been flying the glider in and around East Anglia?
Yeah, so on my second solo, which I got to about 3,500 feet, and I was cruising along heading heading out to the west, and I saw out of RF Middenhall, there was that on that day they were being very busy. Like early in the morning, there was a lot of military jets flying around. I think it was some of the F-15s from Lakenheath. But on my second solo, I actually had 2 KC-135s fly off my wing, which is really cool. And they were probably about 2 miles away, but from up there, it's so close, and just able to see them is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's one of the things. You can't miss the KC-135, definitely. Yeah. Especially with the smoke trails falling behind the engines. But,
yeah.
You're not mentioning that terrible word chemtrails there, are you? Is that
No.
That thing that doesn't happen. Well, now there's some guy called Armando who I think I've heard of him, but he was saying for Jack, what's it like now being in the national spotlight?
Well, I was in Dis with a couple of friends. I think it was the day after I was in the news, and I got recognised standing outside Greg's.
Oh, well, there's a claim to fame.
I know.
It's the most British thing ever.
There was this middle-aged couple come up to me and said, weren't you the young lad out of the news? The young pilot after the news? And I said, yes. And I stood there for about 5 minutes speaking to them about it. And they had, I think, either a son, they had a son wanted to go into flying. And I said they'd be more than welcome to come up to the club and have a flight.
Oh, very cool. So, I mean, now, there's loads of people in the chat room here. Now, there's one guy that you won't have, well, you may have done. So, if you haven't listened to, then I strongly recommend you listen to this. It's a fantastic podcast called the Airline Pilot Guy Show, and Captain Jeff has just joined us in the chat room here. He's saying, I would advise he looks for other work at the moment. This was in reply to the thing. He's just he seems like a decent person, not airline pilot material at all. He's way too smart. So there we go. The good news is with the Airline Pilot Show, he's only correct 50% of the time. So, there is that to look forward to. Nev, have you got any more questions?
No, I was just thinking, the other thing I was going to say to you, Jack, is that you're either going to be a broadcaster or an airline pilot, because you've got a fantastic voice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think you will do very well there. And one of these days, I'm sure you'll be flying with your mum on holiday, and you'll be in the right or the left-hand seat.
Yeah, I hope so.
An Airbus or a 737.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you
actually, on that note, actually, has anyone asked a question yet to Jack, whether Jack is a Boeing or an Airbus man? Jack, come on, Airbus or Boeing?
I'm wondering if I might get slaughtered for my decision. But,
probably.
I have to say, I am a Boeing person.
Oh.
Yay!
Yay! Right answer.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. although some of the Airbuses are nice, I'm a Boeing person. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Correct answer.
Yeah. apparently, that's the correct answer. Well, I mean, look, Jack, it's been so good to have you on here. I'll tell you what. So, just give us another plug for the club. Where is it that you fly?
Tippenham Airfield. So Norfolk Gliding Club.
Okie dokie. And it's we'll have to take ourselves up to we'll have to come and when all this is over, we'll have to come and have a visit and
of course,
have a look at the club and see what it's all about. So
definitely, yes,
we will definitely do that. Yes, all right. Lots of love in the chat room here. Everybody's saying how you slides. Here we go. Mila's saying hooray Boeing. She's very excited. Lane is saying wow, he really is smart choosing that. So clearly, as far as our audience is concerned, you've made the very correct decision. Now, Nev, there's one question that we always ask all of our pilots before we let them escape.
There is indeed. And given the opportunity to fly any aircraft, whether it's current or retired, civil or military, what would be your choice, Jack?
I think my choice, I think I have two. One, I'd love to fly on the legendary Concorde. Experience that sort of flight. And I've never as the recent disappointment, actually, I've never had a chance to fly on the 747, and as they're going out of business, I'd have wanted to fly on one of those because they are the legendary Queen of the Skies.
Yeah, in fact, when
true.
Carlos and I flew back from the Dubai Air Show, was it back end of last year?
November, yeah.
November. Little did we know that was going to be our last flight ever on a BA 747.
Yeah.
So, incredible. But no, the 747 is a fine aircraft. Nearly 50 years of flying. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, yes, yeah, definitely.
Well, look, Jack, thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you to Aaron as well. Thank you for allowing him to join us.
Thank you for having us on.
No, an absolute pleasure, and we'll have to have you on again. So next time you've got our details now. So obviously, if you've anything crops up, do let us know, and we can have a chat again. It's
actually all the best for the future.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, we've got it. So here we go. Here's an offer for you. Look, so Air Commander is saying if Jack's ever down South Wales, then I'll take him on a couple of 747s. There you go.
No,
that's awesome.
Have you ever seen the TV program Plane Reclaimers on Quest?
Actually, no. Yes, I have. Yeah. I have actually.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, these guys are from there basically. So if you're ever down in Wales,
okay,
you're going to have a snout around one of the cockpits. So,
okay.
You know, we'll take you up on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a nice guy.
We might be able to sort you out something else. Actually, thinking about it, so leave us with us. Stay in touch, and we'll see if we can reward you for very kindly joining us on the show.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
We're going to let you get off now. Thank you very much, Jack, for joining us, and good luck with your future endeavours.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome, Jack. Cheers. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Good luck to all you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Right. Okay. We're going to bash on then, Carlos. Let's do some aviation news.
Yes, we're going to move on then with the show. So kicking off this week's... Yeah, thanks for that. That's very kind of you. I know I was late to the party, but there. Anyway, this first story...
You missed the briefing, that's the trouble.
is on the flightglobal.com website, and Boeing confirms speculation that it will end the 747 production in 2022, 53 years after the type's first flight in 1969. In light of the current market dynamics and outlook, they said we complete production of the iconic 747 in 2022, said Chief Executive David Calhoun. Boeing has pushed back its first 777X delivery, which is now targeted for 2022, a delay of up to a year on that. So Boeing has also cut production rates for this 787 from 14 to 6 aircraft monthly, and the combined 777 and 777X from 5 to 2 jets monthly for 2021. The company will continue producing half of a 747 monthly. That's interesting. I hope they get the other half done. And 3 767s monthly. And I'll tell you what, it's good. I'm sad that the 747 is going, but I'm really, really glad they're still pushing the 76s out because they are fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the story that's sort of quite sad, isn't there? I mean, it's you understand why they're doing it. Obviously, Boeing reported, I think it was the second quarter, like $2.4 billion loss. There's also other bits in the story about how they're going to amalgamate production lines and perhaps only have one 777 or 787 production line and all that kind of thing, all about streamlining and stuff. I mean, it's I do worry that we're not out of the woods as far as all of this. The Boeing stuff.
I've said it before, but I'll say it again before we move on. I am so glad that I got the chance to fly the 747 with Virgin and also with Nev last year because that was kind of it really, as Nev said earlier. That was.
I mean, we had a good chat with the crew when they shut down, didn't we? That was the other thing. That was fantastic.
So, I can imagine it's going to be a sad day, obviously, but I guess it was always on the cards. But it's always sad when it sort of becomes official, I suppose. Really, doesn't it? It's. There we go. Anyway, we'll move on to the next story now. And story number 2, this is actually from Flight Global here. It's Smartwing 737 Captain I was reading this story earlier. This one worries me a lot as a nervous flyer. Smartwing 737 captain hid engine failure to continue flight to original destination. So Czech investigators have revealed that a Boeing 737-800 captain misled air traffic control over a serious engine failure and ignored the first officer's urging a diversion in order to press on to Prague, the flight's original destination. On the 22nd of August last year, about 20 minutes after takeoff from Samos in Greece, as the aircraft reached 36,000 feet, its left-hand engine began to lose power and flamed out. Rather than making a pan-pan urgency call, the captain merely informed controllers of a technical problem. Attempts to restart the engine were unsuccessful. While the crew reported the shutdown of the engine to its operations control, the jet passed through Greece, North Macedonia, Serbia, Hungary, Austria, and the Prague region before the crew transmitted a pan-pan emergency call to air traffic control seeking a shortcut to land. Investigators describe a toxic cockpit atmosphere. The highly experienced captain failed to follow cockpit resource management principles to solve the problem. He did not discuss safety issues of the situation with the first officer, who had nearly 2,500 hours on the 737, but instead used the steep authority gradient to push through his poor decisions. The captain held a flight instructor and examiner qualifications and had a senior position within the airline. The first officer did not contradict the captain's decision to proceed to Prague over concerns that this would worsen the crew cooperation necessary to complete. The captain defended his thinking to the inquiry, testifying that he believed his flight experience had been broad enough to assess all of the risks associated with his decisions. None of the 170 passengers and 6 crew members were injured during the event. Now, I mean, as I say, there's a lot of information in this story. It'll be in the show notes, and I strongly recommend you read it. There was one, I'm just trying to find one bit here that made me very, very nervous as a nervous flyer. Here it says basically where it said the 737 landed at Prague. It had 2,435 kilograms of fuel on board, which was literally just 23 kilograms above the reserve fuel figure. Because of the calculations involved with the lower air. I mean, there's so many concerning things in this story here, Nev. I mean,
I really thought we'd moved on from this get home-itis, and I know that the commander has to take ultimate responsibility for decisions that are made in the cockpit, but they are joint decisions.
Yeah,
and there's
they're supposed to be.
This is a very unanimous and one-sided piece of flying. And this could have gone horribly wrong. He was very, very fortunate indeed. And as I say, I think if we were going back to 1970, then you could almost understand it. But things have moved on tremendously with CRM in the cockpit and everybody working as part of the team. And therefore, the decision-making process is part of a team. Obviously, the commander has to take the ultimate decision because at the end of the day, it's his name on the load sheet and on the aircraft documentation, but this is just awful, isn't it? It really is.
No, it really is. I'm just, as I say, as a nervous fly, as you say, it's just, it's just so many things that could have gone right. It's so many what ifs there, isn't there? And Carlos?
Yeah, it's a bit. So I read this story earlier in the week. Actually, I was a bit shocked at reading exactly what had gone on, and you just think, when you're in a position of responsibility and you're being paid a fairly good premium for doing it.
Indeed, yeah. Actually, Mash has just said in the chat room here, look, how did he think he could get away with this? Surely he knew this was going to end up being reported. I mean, that's a good point, isn't it? Really,
and that's why CVRs were invented.
Oh dear. Apparently, it wasn't actually reported. I'm just being told in my ear. Recorded, right? Okay.
No.
Oh, well, there we are. Right. Yes. Okay. We're going to move on to the next story. Nev.
Yes, on the simpleflying.com website, one of our favourite ones. The renowned UK design consultancy Priestman Good has come up with many conceptual designs for the post-pandemic aircraft cabin. Their concept, Pure Skies, has reworked both business and economy class, focusing on hygiene and personal space for that all-important passenger confidence. In the Pure Skies room in business class, each seat is fully enclosed with a floor-to-ceiling curtain separating the passenger from the rest of the cabin. Every passenger gets personal overhead storage and is a personal wardrobe. The IFE is synchronized with the passenger's own device and can be gesture controlled to reduce touch points. In the economy class section, this includes seat-to-ceiling dividers, every other row, and a staggered seating arrangement to provide flexible seating options as needed. Priestman Good suggests that the complete removal of IFE screens in favour of a bring-your-own-device policy. And we've talked about this on many episodes, haven't we? The seatback tray is also no more. Instead, a clip-on meal tray will come directly from the trolley. That's a good idea, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
I hadn't thought of that before. In both classes, the seat itself has minimal split lines and welded fabric seams to minimise the places where dirt and viruses can hide. The fabric and other surfaces in the room are also antimicrobial. So I tell you what, that's some intelligent thinking there, isn't it? And I just wonder if this is going to start shaping how seating is going to be from now on, because everything's changing, isn't it?
It's a really lovely design, isn't it? It's quite classy. I mean, I love it. I really do. It was. I was looking at somebody was saying in the chat room, they were agreeing with me, which I've misplaced. But so Air Command was saying that looks absolutely amazing. It's it's great, isn't it? I really love it. It's good stuff. Sorry, I'm having some tech issues in the studio here, so Carlos,
really?
you better take over.
Okay, we'll move on to the next story, which is on the flightradar24.com page. And this is about one of my second favourite aircraft after the TriStar, the Boeing 757. And the headline on here is Titan Airways 757 visits one of the world's most remote and difficult airports. Some great pictures on this story as well. So aviation fans had a bit of excitement this week as the remote and notoriously tricky airport at St Helena, HLE, a British overseas territory in the middle of South Atlantic Ocean, welcomed a 757 for the first time. The 757-200, belonging to Titan Airways, was the largest aircraft to land at the airfield, which has cliffs at both ends and is well known for challenging winds. Is Al there? Anyway, not to mention a complete lack of diversion airports for hundreds of miles in every direction. Flight ZT 6892 came into St Helena from Ascension Islands, another remote outpost, and sister island known for its military airfield, Royal Air Force Ascension Island, also known as Wide Awake Airfield, and jumping off point for other unique flights to remote territories like the famous Falkland Islands Airbridge. And the aircraft itself in question, Golf Zulu Alpha Papa X-Ray, is on a repatriation mission, taking people from the island back to the UK. So it's returning to London via Accra as Zulu Tango 6893. St Helena, the island itself, doesn't receive many flights and has seen even less in recent months due to COVID-19. It previously saw regular service from South Africa, so it's perhaps not a surprise that the St Helena Facebook page has been buzzing this week with news of the arrival. Titan Airways previously flew an A318 into the airport carrying medical staff and supplies, and there's a great video on this particular story that shows that, which I think Matt may well have played on that story there. But it's for one thing, it's great to see the 75s still being used quite a lot by Titan. And also, I had a look. There's a few. If you go on the website and you Google this particular airport and you look at the approach plates and stuff for it, it is one heck of a approach into this particular airfield, and I am fully intent on having a go at this tomorrow on X-Plane 11.
Oh, I hope you video that so we can see it and pass comment.
Absolutely.
I will record it. Yeah, it's actually there's a video. If anyone Googles the St Helena approach on YouTube, there's a few approach videos that have been filmed from the flight deck, which are the whole view is stunning from the flight deck. But yeah. Apparently, according to our producer John, the social media at St Helena is also incredibly active. But yeah. But no, it's good. Good to see this.
Everybody's very excited, I dare say, as I say, with such an unusual aircraft sort of rocking up there.
Well, it's a little bit bigger than the A318. Let's be honest. It's slightly longer, and it looks a lot better as well. Let's be honest here. The Boeing 757 is one of the
I disagree.
Most beautifulest aircraft.
I disagree personally, but then I'm
never agrees with me. Never agrees with me.
Oh yes.
I remember BA. They had some.
I enjoyed the 75 so much, going to Glasgow, Edinburgh, Belfast on the shuttle routes. I mean, these are seriously overpowered aircraft, and there's nothing that beats a 757 on a short haul sector. Maybe not Matt's favourite for reasons that we know.
Exactly.
Yes, that I'll never shut up about. Yeah.
So moving on to the next story, Nev. This is story number 6, a very important story, and one I should imagine you know plenty about.
Well, I know, and this whole episode this week, one week we've got a good news story, the next week we've got a bad news story, and this is a bad one, I'm afraid. This is on the 1mileatatime.com website. It says that British Airways Club World London City service was one of the coolest ways to cross the Atlantic in business class. The airline had a specially configured Airbus A318 with just 32 business class seats. The flight operated out of London City rather than out of Heathrow, and on the westbound sector, the flight stopped off in Shannon to refuel, and it also meant that passengers could clear US immigration there, meaning that you arrived in the US as a domestic passenger. Coming back home, the wind was behind you usually, so you could fly non-stop from JFK to London City, except very often when the aircraft was late and the London City Airport curfew shut the airport, so they ended up at Southend or Gatwick. Well, that's neither here nor there. But the flight did operate with the prestigious flight numbers of BA001 and BA002, which in the past were flight numbers used by Concorde. And when they had a second aircraft, that was BA003 and BA004 as well. Now, IAG announced that BA's sole Airbus A318 would be exiting its fleet. This is also the only plane capable of operating the Club World London City service. So it's also safe to assume that this service will be permanently discontinued. So I was having a bit of a Twitter chat today with a lady called Sally Gethin, who's a very well-respected aviation correspondent. And she was saying, well, can't they just reconfigure the aircraft, Well, I think that would be terribly expensive to go from 32 business class seats to 120 odd in regular class. And also that aircraft has got software specifically equipped to handle the 5.5 degree glide slope angle at London City Airport. So there'll be lots of electronics and software to muck about with there as well. But it's a great shame. It's a real pity I never got to fly on it either. So it'll be interesting to see whether it's parted out or whether it will be sold on to another airline somewhere.
See,
I've done a little bit of research actually, Nev, while you were reading that. And I'm just on a good site. It's actually planespotters.net. And that does actually say on here that Golf Echo Uniform November Alpha Airbus A318 is now currently stored. And Echo Uniform November Bravo has apparently, according to this, has gone to Titan.
Ah, right, okay.
Interesting. It's that John Jester has actually said in the chat room here. Interestingly, has just sort of said that that there is a possibility it might become a business jet, of course, with its current configuration. So, who knows? They might sell it rather than retire. They might retire it from BA, perhaps.
Nev, get your gold card out.
Yeah, I will definitely.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. Sorry, It's another A318 for Titan from Tony S there. There's nothing there, I'm afraid. I'm being told there's a comment there that hasn't come up on my feed for some reason, so I don't know what that's all about. Anyway, let's. The thing that I love about that the most though is that the whole. And I know we covered a story similar to this last week, didn't we? Where I think they're talking about being able to do the same thing in was it Brussels or somewhere like that, where certainly in Europe somewhere where you can do the pre-clearance for
right.
the US, and that's the thing, isn't it? Like landing at Shannon basically because they wanted to refuel, but also you could do your pre-clearance so that when you got the other end you were being treated as a domestic passenger.
Even all that delay, going to Shannon, refueling and clearing customs there, that would still probably save you time rather than arriving in the US as an international flight. So, and let's face it, these were not cheap tickets, I've got to say.
No.
Some of them were probably equivalent of the old Concorde tickets.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
But the people that would be flying it would normally be those rich ladies and gentlemen out of Canary Wharf.
Right. Okay. Yes. Air Commander was actually saying no. Apparently, this idea is being it's being retired permanently. So that really is the end of the road for it, which seems bizarre. Really, it's I wonder if the plane reclaimers will get it. Who knows? There we are. It's.
So the next story, or the last story in this news this week, and is obviously a good news story. The very first A330 to be retired. This is on simpleflying.com. So for any of you A330 lovers, the very first Airbus A330, this is MSN 012, currently registered as Bravo Hotel Lima Juliet, and this is the first one ever to roll off the production line at Airbus, has been put out to pasture. It entered service flying for Airbus in November 1992 and went on to work for Cathay Group for more than 2 decades. Now it has taken its last flight and will be resting its wings in Taipei. During its years with the Cathay Group, it has flown for the main Cathay Pacific brand and for Dragonair, now Cathay Dragon. Over 24 years of service to the group, Hotel Lima Juliet conducted a staggering 63,000 hours of flying and almost 27,000 cycles. Taking off from Hong Kong, July the 17th at around 18 minutes past 10 local time, it flew for just 1 hour and 20 minutes to Taipei. There it will be stored, awaiting its final fate. It will more than likely remain stored and potentially have parts salvaged for spares, no doubt the engines. And it's not a glamorous end for this historic machine, but after almost 28 years of flying, a well-deserved rest. And very, very well done indeed to that first one. It's actually worth noting as well that this, before it obviously worked for Cathay, was a flying test bed and had lots of test equipment on board at the time, which was taken out when it was converted back to passenger use. So there we go.
There you go. That's that is interesting. Now, people may well have noticed that we are sort of pushing our way through the news a bit this week, because actually coming up very soon after the military, we've got a really exciting piece that was done with Armando and John Jester, and if you are able to stay till the end of the show, it's quite a long one, which is why we're pushing our way through, but I promise you, please stay for it. It's absolutely fantastic. That's one of the reasons why we're pushing through the show this week. I wonder if we perhaps should just remind everyone, because we're not far away from the competition results being given out soon, so perhaps you could run us through that, Carlos.
Yeah, don't forget the competition. You've got until next week to send us a short piece of feedback, a short story about aviation in your life. Now, this could be anything from a first memory of what kind of brought aviation into your life, or a special memory of something to do with aviation that's affected you or brought joy to your life, which I'm sure it has. So if you send us in, that feedback can be either written, or you can do it as an audio, or even a video if you like. You can send it into podcast@planetalkinguk.com, or you can send it in to our WhatsApp number, which I can't remember what that is off the top of my head, but we'll give it to you at the end of the show.
+44 757 2249166. There you are.
I knew we'd do that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you could be in with a chance of winning that £150 voucher to spend in the Plane Reclaimers store. Just a quick note on that. Andrew's added a load more stuff on the website over the last few days from a few quite noteworthy aircraft. And all of these are well within that £150 price bracket. So you can literally buy a good portion of cabin interior with the £150. So get your bits and pieces into us. It'd be great to hear your feedback, and also gives us a chance to find out about what your passion and bits and pieces for aviation and what you've loved. So get those sent in, and we will be drawing those out of the hat next week.
What, that very hat? Yeah.
I think Gemma's quite excited because I've said to her that she'll be drawing them out of the hat. So she's,
right. Okay. Did you want to just, while you're in the chair there, Carlos, perhaps you just whiz through some of the wonderful people who are in our chat room this evening?
Yeah, a big hello to everyone who's in the chat room this evening. We've got loads of the family members in there. Loads of family. We've got Ra Khan who's in there. We've got Tony S. Hello to you, Tony. We've got Air Commander. Hello there. And Myla is also. Lane Street. Stephen H. Just scrolling over. James J. Hello to you, James. Masha. Hello to you, Masha. John Jester. Lane Street. I'm trying not to miss anyone. I'm scrolling down.
Jenny Parkinson.
Tony S. Jenny in Rome. Stephen H. And hopefully I haven't missed anyone out. But thanks, everyone. Katie Finch was in there as well. So big thanks to everyone who has joined us in the live YouTube chat room this evening on this rather warm Friday.
Well, quite, yes, indeed. Now, we're going to move on to the next part of the show, if we may. Now, Nev, we had a sort of passenger experience from you, which was about a month ago now, I think, wasn't it, when you were you took a little flight over to Edinburgh for us to see what it was all like. And now you've obviously flown out of there recently because you went to Newcastle and back, didn't you, via Heathrow? And it was a very different experience.
Yeah, I thought I would just give you a quick update about how things are at the moment. I didn't think I'd bother doing another Nev's passenger experience this week because I thought it'll be the same as 3 or 4 weeks ago. But boy, has it changed. Well, first thing is Heathrow T5 is a lot busier than it was previously. But also, if you're familiar with the airport, as you come into the regular security area, I said before I wouldn't mind having the signage contract for the terminal.
Yeah,
I've changed my mind. I would like the perspex and frame contract for that terminal now, because there is so much perspex covering, and it goes the whole length of the baggage check-in, the security part of the operation. So you've got this tiny little sort of hatch where you have to put things through, and you load your stuff onto the what would you call it? Sort of the travelator type thing.
Yeah, the travelator belt. Yeah.
Before it actually goes through the X-ray machine.
Oh, right.
And of course, things get terribly slow. So, as I often say, you don't want to be in a rush because things have slowed down a lot. And of course, the capacity is nowhere near at normal anyway at the moment. So, so that was quite interesting. But there is perspex and metal extrusion and framework absolutely everywhere now, which there wasn't 3 weeks ago. The first time I had the chance to go into the first class lounge as well, which was quite nice. They've got a table service operating there, so you scan the QR code that's on your table, and that comes up with an app, and then you choose what you want, and they bring it to you as a table service, which was really nice, I thought. And in the same breath, I'm reading in today's press that BA have lost £711 million in Q2. And as one of my colleagues said to me today, "Oh, Nev, that sounds a bit lumpy," and I think that would be a very good summary of it.
Yeah.
So BA are trying their very best to do the best they can. Flew up to Newcastle on 319. Only 25 of us, I think, on the flight up there yesterday, and then this afternoon coming back, probably about 60, something like that. And I was having a chat with the cabin crew. Some of them had just come back for the first time after not flying since March. So again, the people have been furloughed. It was really odd, I must say. But one good bit of news, though, I was very impressed with the first officer who, just as we intercepted the glide slope, kicked off the autopilot and did a manual approach and landing all the way down from when they dropped the gear to when we hit the deck.
Oh, nice.
So nice. And it was also very bumpy today because, as you may know, it's been quite warm here in the UK, so great for gliding. So it was about 36 degrees for the most part. So it was a bit lumpy on the way down, but he did a cracking job, actually. So, that was really nice.
Actually, Nev, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Just off the, I just wonder what are the passengers' attitudes like, kind of thing.
Well, I think people need to be a bit more patient. I think there was a little bit of stroppiness going on from one or two of my fellow passengers, but I think they've just got to understand that we're going to be in this situation for a while now, and there's no doubt about it. Wearing a mask in the terminal is not comfortable at all. Having said that, when you get on the aircraft, because you've got positive pressure in the aircraft when the pressurization system is operating, it's not too bad, I have to say. So I think that is a manageable state of affairs. But of course, the BA weren't offering the normal type of food on board, although it was quite acceptable. No problem with that at all. And whilst I was in Newcastle, I bumped into a good friend of ours, Andy from the A320 podcast. So we had a bit of a chat and a coffee and a bun whilst we were up there. And talking to him about his airline, he was saying that, again, the load factors are terribly small. And in fact, even when he was operating some of the flights this week where they've got perhaps 90 people booked to go, by the time all the cancellations happen or government advice changes, very often he'll only get 50 people on that sector. Wow. So it's really tough at the moment, and it's a very dynamic situation as we've found, because obviously today here in the UK there's been rule changes about what you can and can't do, and this is going to be going on for a while, but it's affecting the aviation business massively.
So I mean, as a passenger, Nev, I mean, how does you were saying all the new perspex screens and lots of social distancing rules and stuff in there, I mean, how does it make you feel as a passenger walking through this new perspex dungeon, for want of a better word? I mean, it's just... Of course,
we are certainly in the West. We're all very, we rely heavily on eye contact and face contact, don't we? So this new situation is a bit alien to us all, I think. Well, we're going to get used to it, don't get me wrong, but it's just a bit new and a bit different. And I think also when you're talking to the cabin crew, or where they're talking to you, it is a bit difficult to communicate. If they're asking, do you want tea or coffee? And you're always saying, pardon, I couldn't hear what you were saying. And I noticed actually, entirely separately from this, although slightly connected, our good friend Richard Westcott, that used to be the BBC's aviation correspondent, has done a fantastic series out of Addenbrooke's Hospital about how the COVID cases are being dealt with there. And you should see some of the PPE that those guys and girls have to wear. The operating theatre. It looks absolutely stifling. So, we shouldn't really complain about it.
No.
But, it's a very different experience, and I'm sure as when Carlos and I go to Malta at the end of September, we'll find that it's different again.
If we go,
yes, BA already changed.
Actually, just quickly, Nev, I don't know whether you saw the news today, Nev, on social media, but they've actually now announced their first participant of the Malta Air Show.
Oh, I did do that, yes.
Yeah.
So that's a good sign, isn't it?
It is a good sign. And also,
it's quite helpful.
The good sign is as well that they're the Italian GDIF who are going to be there with a ATR 72 and an AW139, I think, helicopter.
Yes.
169, sorry. But yeah, they've announced it. But they've also said, Nev, that there is going to be static stuff.
Is there?
Oh, good. So,
that's interesting.
Interview opportunities.
Yes, fingers crossed.
All being well, so that would be nice, wouldn't it? So, so we're looking forward to going very much. And that's what is the dates? It's the 26th and 27th of September, which is
That's it, yeah.
Saturday and Sunday. Not long to go, but I still hope that we're all going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Okay. Time to move on then. Thanks for that, Nev. That's really that's to say it's sort of both worrying / interesting all at the same time. Really. Time to move on to the next bit. As many of you will know, I've been chatting each week to the legend that is Captain Al in our new segment that we're calling The Plain Truths. And this week we are talking about bomb threats. That's a cheery thought for everyone, isn't it? Bomb threats. Hello and welcome to another Plain Truce, and this week we're going to be talking about that really horrible word that is bomb threats. Joining me today, as always, is the legend that is Captain Al. Hi, Captain Al.
Hi, Matt. Yep, we're going to talk about something that really doesn't happen very often, fortunately.
No, indeed. Now, obviously, this has come into the forefront of people's mind, obviously, because sort of post-lockdown, there has been an incident involving, let's just say, a low-cost airline where a credible bomb threat was made. And obviously, that, as a nervous flyer, obviously, that's got me thinking. So, in the event of receiving a bomb threat while you're in the air, what happens, basically?
Okay, so let's take a step back, if you will. Yep. Bomb threats are, I'm going to choose my words carefully, are events that happen from time to time. And the majority of bomb threats are hoaxes. It's as simple as that. You know, the classic one is a passenger is running late for their flight. So stupidly, they'll phone up, say there's a bomb at the airport or a bomb on the aeroplane, thinking that will be sufficient to delay everything and they'll make their flight. And yes, there are people who are sufficiently stupid who will do that.
I mean, that's worrying for a start.
Well, yeah. So the majority of bomb threats are hoaxes. Now, the question that you asked me was very specific, and that was, what happens if you receive a threat in the air? So the first thing to say is that a lot of what happens we can't really talk about because, as you could imagine, there are some security implications.
Right.
So I will be sufficiently vague in certain areas but endeavour to answer the question. So if the flight crew receive a bomb threat in the air, it has already been screened to eliminate the known hoax scenario.
Right.
So we have specific coded messages that we will receive, which I won't elaborate on, that basically mean that the airline or the state of registration have already determined that they feel that the threat is real enough to advise the crew. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, all of the hoaxes are filtered out if the aircraft is in flight, because there's no point in phoning up a crew and saying, we've had a bomb threat, but we don't think it's real. Because what are you going to do? You're going to worry
a load of people unnecessarily, aren't you, essentially?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So when we get a credible bomb threat, there are a list of procedures that unfortunately I can't elaborate on that we would then go through. Now, a lot of this depends on where you are in the world, because countries that you are flying over have a vested interest in a safe outcome for this event. Because quite clearly, if you're at 36,000 feet over London, or even Bungay for that matter, the good people living in London or Bungay don't really want bits of your aeroplane scattering down from the sky over them.
No.
So, in the UK, this is public knowledge, an aircraft that experiences a bomb threat or indeed significant unrest on board the aircraft will be intercepted by the UK military, in this case the Air Force typically, and will be escorted to one of a couple of airports in the UK. So in the southern part of the UK, that would be London Stansted, and in the northern part of the UK, that would be Prestwick. And there are predetermined courses of action that will take place once the aircraft has landed. And the reason that those two airports are specific is because the predetermined action is already kind of set up and ready to go, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, in the past, when bomb threats have taken place, one of the areas to, I suppose, identify or investigate is whether the perpetrators of the bomb threat are actually on board, or whether it's just a sort of remote bomb, if you like. Since September the 11th, the dynamics of bomb threats, hijacks, and disturbances on board quite clearly changed. The motives of terrorists changed, and therefore we tend not to investigate those areas so much. Within the cabin, If there is a bomb threat, the cabin crew will attempt to locate the bomb, if indeed there is one on board. And there are then ways and means of dealing with said bomb to try to minimize any detrimental effect that said bomb would have on the aircraft. So you might say, well, what on earth does that mean? Well, there are designated areas on an aircraft where you could put a bomb where it will cause the least amount of damage. And that's basically where the bomb would be put. I have to say, because we do have some friends associated with the program in the cabin crew environment, and I would say good luck to any cabin crew member who has to pick up a bomb and move it.
I can imagine.
But that is what they would be asked to do. Once the aircraft has landed, assuming that it was just a bomb on board and that there weren't any hijackers or terrorists on board, it doesn't surprise anybody that we would evacuate the aeroplane pretty quickly and then leave the authorities to deal with the aircraft and said bomb.
Wow.
Now, I have to say that bombs on aeroplanes quite clearly do happen, but they are exceptionally rare. Mm. And there have been many, many cases where bombs have gone off on aeroplanes and most people have survived. I think of one particular event a few years ago where the terrorist was actually accompanying the bomb. The bomb went off, put a fairly sizable hole in the side of the aeroplane, sufficiently to suck out the terrorist, but everybody else stayed on board. So you can make of that what you will.
A satisfactory outcome, I think, is probably the best way to...
In the eyes of many, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. Slightly controversial, I know. I mean, it sounds like something that would... You know, it's a very nerve-wracking subject, I suppose this is. But then I suppose, again, if we try and rationalise this a bit, there is every possibility. You could be go for a day at the races, for example, and be in just as much danger and or threat to something like this than an in-air event.
Absolutely. You're a much younger chap than myself, but anybody who's grown up in the United Kingdom will be aware of bombs. I grew up through what is euphemistically called the Troubles, but we had many provisional IRA bomb attacks on the mainland here in the UK. I live not very far from Warrington, which was badly destroyed by a bomb, as was Manchester, as was various parts of London, Brighton. We could continue to list places. So, yes, you're absolutely right. Bombs are an unfortunate evil that cannot be avoided, but we go to great lengths in aviation to prevent them getting on board aeroplanes.
It's a very interesting subject. Thank you, Captain Al.
You're welcome.
What a jovial subject to pick, Matt. I was sitting here just thinking, I can't wait to get on a commercial airliner now.
I know, but you say that, but like, from my point of view, as a nervous passenger, actually, I didn't realise there was like a special place where a device would be put, for example, if located and or found and stuff. So I mean, I found it a really interesting subject, and that was the reason why we had that chat. So
when the aircraft's on the ground, it's a great way of getting everyone off quick, I suppose.
Right. I mean, I think you're missing the point here slightly. But there we are. Never mind. Thank you, Captain Al, as always. There will be more from Captain Al and the Plain Truths next week.
Now, it's good feedback, actually, we're getting from that. So well done to you and Captain Al for doing that.
Worth mentioning, it's now also available as an audio podcast. So if you search for The Plain Truths, I know.
Right, I better get message my father now.
Immediately, absolutely. The Plain Truth. One episode is available on there at the moment. The rest will be available hopefully later on today. So yes, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Hopefully, all being well. There we go. Right, okay. We're going to move on to the military now. Armando isn't here this week, but he
is virtually.
He is here virtually. And now I should just say, because obviously Armando will start when we move on. But unfortunately, we originally planned to, as some of you know, to have Captain Nick with us today. Unfortunately, he got caught in traffic and still hasn't made it home yet. Bless him. So it's we're going to don't be alarmed when he throws to Captain Nick and he's not there. But anyway, if everybody's ready, it's time to do the military. Here we go.
Guys, I'm glad we have Nick on the show this week to comment on this story. From ABC News, an American F-15 fighter jet came within 1,000 meters of an Iranian civil airliner flying over southern Syria last week in order to carry out a visual identification of that aircraft, according to the U.S. military. The visual identification was completed safely, but not before the Mahan Air pilots carried out a rapid descent into Beirut that resulted in several passenger injuries. A statement from U.S. Central Command said that the F-15 was on a routine air mission in the vicinity of Combined Joint Task Force Operation Inherent Resolve at Tanf Garrison in Syria, conducting a visual inspection of a Mahan Air passenger airliner at a safe distance of approximately 1,000 meters from the airliner this evening. The visual inspection occurred to ensure the safety of coalition personnel at Tanf Garrison, said the spokesperson, describing a remote U.S. military base in southern Syria along the border with Jordan that is home to a small number of American troops. Once the F-15 pilot identified the aircraft as a passenger plane, the F-15 safely opened distance from the aircraft, adding that the professional intercept was conducted in accordance with international standards. But the F-15's close proximity to the airliner, about a kilometer, seems to have led the civilian pilots to carry out a rapid and unexpected descent, injuring various people on board. A 55-mile area around U.S. troops at the At-Tanf garrison is considered a deconfliction zone where Russian and Syrian government ground forces are not allowed to operate. The same applies to Russian and Syrian aircraft, and any aircraft flying through that airspace, which must identify themselves via radio. The U.S. official told ABC News that the F-15 approached the airliner to visually inspect it after it did not respond to their radio communications. Reports of the injuries aboard the airliner first appeared in Iranian state media and originally cited an intercept by Israeli fighters. They later said that American fighter jets had harassed the civilian pilots, forcing them to carry out abrupt flight maneuvers. Public flight data for Air Mahan Flight 1152, and viewed by ABC News, showed that the airliner dropped about 14,000 feet in 4 minutes. Video taken aboard the airliner shared on social media showed that what appeared to be a fighter jet flying at a distance, then pulling away from the aircraft. In one video, a passenger described how his forehead was bloodied as the airliner executed its rapid descent. In another clip, another man was seen lying flat on the airliner's back galley as his fellow passengers attended to him. Now, Steve Ganyard, an ABC News aviation correspondent, said the injuries appeared to be the result of an overreaction by Iranian pilots. Based on the distance that the American jet was from the aircraft, the question becomes, what did they do with their flight controls when they saw the fighter jet? A professional ICAO standard visual identification of an unresponsive airliner flying through a combat zone by a fighter aircraft, after which the Mahan flight inexplicably executes a dangerously aggressive descent that apparently injured several passengers. Iranian media reported that after the landing in Beirut, the airliner did return to Tehran. The team over at APG were discussing this on the last show, and Nick offered an alternative theory that the pilots might have reacted to a TCAS alert. Nick?
Yes, unfortunately, Nick isn't here on this one, so that would have worked really well, wouldn't it? But there we are. I'll tell you what, from my point of view, one of the things that I find quite I don't know. I'm just thinking from a passenger's point of view, because I mean, if you read the story, obviously there's quite a sort of like, it drops quite dramatically, doesn't it? As it's sort of essentially taking evasive action because the pilot decided that they were under attack. I mean, it's a very, from a passenger's point of view, it would have been a very worrying, maneuver / thing to see out of your windows. I mean, what does everybody think?
I was going to say, let's not forget that this has happened a few times in the past, and it's not ended very well when military jets have mistaken or come across a commercial airliner. I can't remember the certain stories, but there's a few stories out there. I think one of them was an Air India flight quite a few years ago. I think, Nev, you probably remember that one that was I think it was shot somewhere over the RSC, I think.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Yeah. John Jester in the chat room saying that TCAS resolution advisory wouldn't cause you to float people into the overheads. It's a very good point. And I think that, there's something about this story that doesn't quite add up, isn't there? There's information that's gone on that we none of us are aware of. Very interesting.
There is that. Also, he's saying that apparently Chris Griggs is saying apparently it's cheap. It's cheaper than a 0G parabolic flight. That's always a fact. Yeah. As I say, do the pilots think they can outmaneuver an F-15? Is what our producer is saying in the air. Also, Richard Adams is saying it's not as if an airliner being genuinely threatened by a military jet could do anything about it, which is probably a good point if they had made their mind up.
It could dump fuel if the fighter jet was behind the aircraft. Dump a whole load of aviation fuel at the aircraft. I suppose
that's one way of looking at it. I suppose, yeah.
If it has the capability to dump, not all aircraft have the capability to dump fuel. So
no, Lane has suggested that Vomit Comet, get your tickets here, but there we are. Never mind.
So moving on to the second story then in the military segment this week, brought to us again by Armando.
A few weeks ago, we talked about the Air Force establishing contracts for aggressor training. In an update to the story from The Drive, Air Combat Command has awarded those contracts for the first 5 U.S. Air Force bases to receive the contract aggressor support under its huge Red Air Adversary Support Program. The Airborne Tactical Advantage Company, or ATAC, has announced that it has secured the support contracts for Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico, and Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. Contracts for a further 3 locations have also been awarded, the details of which are unclear at the moment. But further news is expected shortly from the Air Force. The 6th location from the initial tranche of planned awards, the identity of which is not presently known, is on hold pending an environmental impact study. Air Combat Command posted its solicitation for the first 6 bases for adversary air support this past winter. The bids were due by March 31st for the locations at Kingsley Field, Oregon, Luke Air Force Base, Arizona, Holloman Air Force Base, Eglin Air Force Base, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, and Kelly Field in Texas. Now, ATAC says that its 2 awards are worth a combined $240 million and that it will see the company providing air-to-air adversary training missions for trainee pilots going through the formal training units, or FTUs, at these bases. The combined awards provide for up to 3,000 sorties per year for up to 4.5 years, with ATAC using its new Dassault Mirage F1 fighters for that kind of work. ATAC is now part of Textron Airborne Solutions, and in an anticipation of the Air Force requirement, it procured 61 former French Air Force Mirage F1 and F1B jets, which began arriving at the new Adversary Center of Excellence in June of 2017. The aircraft are being returned to an airworthy status at this Fort Worth Alliance Airport facility. ATAC's first refurbished Mirage F1 flew at Alliance Airport on August 22nd of last year. The first flight was a 2-seat F1B, which made an initial acceptance flight.
I
It's a lot of money. $240 million. I mean, if someone handed me a contract, I'll be, oh, thanks.
Yay. Absolutely. Have you ever received a contract of that size, Nev?
No, oddly enough, no.
Right, okay. It's the only reason you're here. Yeah. There we go. Right, well, we'll move on to the last story then. Here, we're talking European collaboration with this one. Take it away, Armando.
From the United Press International, the British, Swedish, and Italian defense industries are in discussion to collaborate on an air combat capability, according to defense contractor BAE Systems. BAE said that the framework was promoted as a means to employ tens of thousands of skilled workers in those countries' leading defense industry companies. The announcement mentioned Britain's BAE, Leonardo UK, Rolls-Royce, MBDA UK, Italy's Leonardo, Elettronica, Avio Aero, and MBDA Italia, along with Sweden's Saab Aerospace and GKN Aerospace. The companies would also work in part with Britain's Future Combat Air System project, a $24 billion plan by Britain to build the next generation fighter plane, now known as the Tempest, by 2035. While the Tempest would replace France's Rafale and Britain's Typhoon aircraft, it is expected to be an advancement over the F-35 from the United States, which is already flown by several countries in Europe. The European defense industry leaders were enthusiastic last week about this prospective collaboration. Chief Executive Officer at Leonardo, Alessandro Profumo, said, "All three national industries fully grasp the historic nature of this moment. Tempest will be the cornerstone of the cross-border system of common defense, which will extend far beyond combat air. It will secure economic benefits and vast industrial and technological progress for Italy and our partners. Together we share an understanding that if we get this right now, our respective aerospace and defense industries will thrive for a generation." Now, this announcement came after the British Defense Ministry said last week that 7 more companies had signed agreements to work on what it now calls Team Tempest. Bombardier Belfast, Collins Aerospace, GE Aviation UK, GKN Aerospace, Martin Baker, Kinetic, and Thales UK have joined BAE Leonardo, MBDA, Rolls-Royce, and the Ministry of Defense on the Tempest project, according to British officials. Now, additional companies are expected to join the consortium soon. This project, which began in 2018, currently employs 1,800 people in Britain. Defense Minister Ben Wallace commented that just 2 years after Team Tempest was created, they delivered a world's first. It's no surprise that when you attract the very best of British engineering and design, technological leaps like these are guaranteed. He continued to say, "I'm delighted 7 more companies have joined this mission to work in collaboration with the Ministry of Defense under the Team Tempest banner. They will bring the ambition, invention, and expertise that will deliver breakthroughs that we will depend on for decades to come."
Now, this is a really interesting subject. I mean, I love anything that involves collaboration. Obviously, that's clearly the way forward, isn't it? With these things, it's nice to sort of be working with other other resources, I suppose, other forces across Europe.
I don't know if you've noticed, but military is expensive. Whichever way you look at it, it's very rare, certainly in the European region, that one country has got the resource to do absolutely everything. So they need the collaboration of as many like-minded companies as they can, I would imagine.
Yeah. That's probably why when they brought the F-35s to Riyadh a few years back, when they first brought them there, and they didn't let anyone near them. No one at all. Put the fences up and everything.
Oh, did they? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, well, just in case anyone stole one, Anyway.
Right. Okay. I'll bear that in mind. Thanks. Is that likely anytime soon? I mean,
I doubt it.
I mean, it's a very ballsy move, isn't it, to go up to a load of military personnel and say, "I'm just going to hotwire that and take that home."
Actually, before we finish the military segment, I will just say, for anyone living, obviously me and Matt live in East Anglia, as most of you know, a lot watch the show. This week has been so incredibly busy in and around the area we live in. We've had the Ospreys coming over. We've had Chinooks.
Well, hence my picture behind me. Look,
exactly. We've also had the F-35s over, and we also had the I think there's the F-18s come over as well earlier on this week. It has been a really, really, really busy week here in East Anglia for military aviation. So
indeed,
it's been nice to see.
Absolutely. Now we're going to move on to a very special segment, Carlos, which I'll leave you to introduce. I'm really excited about sharing this with everyone.
Yeah, this is incredibly interesting, guys and girls. I hope you enjoy this. For those of you who may have heard and remember that the NTSB released the findings and the reports on the Atlas Air flight. So this is Armando, who sat down this week with John Jester to chat with him about the NTSB findings and the processes behind the investigation of the Atlas Air 3591 crash. In case you've forgotten about the incident, Armando has a quick rundown of the event and the investigation findings.
The National Transportation Safety Board has found that Atlas Air Flight 3591 crashed outside Houston in 2019 after the first officer, due partly to a sensory illusion, improperly reacted to inadvertent activation of the aircraft's go-around mode. The NTSB, in conclusions released on July 14th, also cites first officer airmanship deficiencies and shortcomings by the captain as factors in playing a role in the crash. They stated in the report, also contributing were systemic deficiencies in the aviation industry's selection and performance measurement practices, which failed to address the first officer's aptitude-related deficiencies and maladaptive stress response. The NTSB disclosed its findings in a webcast hearing on July 14th. The investigation is complete, but the final accident report has not been released. The Federal Aviation Administration said that it intends to address some of the NTSB's concerns next year by requiring sharing of pilot records. The Atlas Air Boeing 767-300, a converted freighter, registration 1217 Alpha, crashed as it approached Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport on February 23, 2019, during a flight from Miami. 3 people died in the crash: the captain, the first officer, and a pilot traveling as a jump-seater. The accident sequence began when the aircraft was about 35 nautical miles outside of Houston, descending in light turbulence through 6,300 feet, with the first officer at the controls. The turbulence likely caused the first officer's wrist or watch to inadvertently activate the jet's go-around switch, which triggered a sequence of events which we'll discuss here in just a minute. Now, the NTSB said the first officer deliberately withheld from Atlas a history of performance issues. They also concluded that the first officer's repeated use of incomplete and inaccurate information about his employment history on resumes and applications were deliberate attempts to conceal his history of performance deficiencies and deprive Atlas Air and at least one other former employer of the opportunity to fully evaluate his aptitude and competency as a pilot. In its response, Atlas Air said the NTSB's report provides valuable findings that will help our company and the aviation community as a whole as we continue to improve safety across our industry. Of critical importance is the need for an improved federal pilot's record database to provide airlines with full visibility of pilot history in the hiring process. Now, to prevent such accidents in the future, the NTSB urged the FAA to emphasize that aircraft operators should use flight operations experts, not designated agents, to review pilot records prior to hiring. The board recommends that the FAA addresses shortcomings with an existing but voluntary pilot records database, which is used to share pilot records among airlines. The database should include all pilot training records related to airline employment processes. The NTSB also reiterated that previous recommendation that airlines, prior to hiring new pilots, be required to obtain and review notices of disapprovals. Such forms are records of areas where pilot applicants demonstrate unsatisfactory piloting knowledge or skill. The FAA said that it expects in January 2021 to publish a rule requiring the industry to provide pilot records to the pilot records database. The FAA will complete the final database after the agency publishes the final rule. So I'm joined now by one of my longest friends and a 747 pilot for Acme Giant, John. John is a flight instructor. He was a captain at a regional airline before moving to the 747. And he was a pilot union representative to the NTSB and was heavily involved in the investigation shortly after the mishap occurred. When we pick up the conversation, we were talking about some of the NTSB conclusions. they talk about aviation industry selection and performance measurement issues. How did you get there?
Yeah, so through the course of an investigation, you're going to look at the backgrounds of all the pilots. And we did this with this particular case. The background of the captain was not of a particular note. It was pretty standard. An individual failure of one event and some monitoring, but no other significant issues. When we did begin to look into the background of the first officer, though, that was where we started seeing some issues. He had a number of previous employers he had worked at in the regionals. We believe some 135 operations as well, that he didn't successfully complete training. He was flying for Mesa Airlines prior to this accident and came to us after failing to upgrade to captain and being sent back to the right seat with comments that in the debriefing notes that were done through interviews where it indicated that he was even challenged to get back into the right seat. He had a tendency to get flustered in training events where he didn't feel confident and would push buttons. That's what pretty much everybody has said through different events. And we had a previous event where he froze and pitched the plane over, basically froze in a simulator event. So these background things, what happens is we have a program in the United States called PREA. So that's Pilot Records Improvement Act. And that happened after Colgan back in earlier 2000s. It was also a congressional law that came out that required the FAA to develop PREA and to develop a pilot record database. And that happened. And what happens, the pilot record database part never has come to fruition yet. Conveniently, the FAA has recently just put out a notice of proposed rulemaking to actually create that. And that would address some of these record keepings where you can, as hiring a company, look at somebody's background and say, okay, what's the progression of this individual? I think it's one of the key things we want to stress in aviation is failure in training should be an option. That means that there is a standard is being held. We're seeing the standard being applied, and people need to achieve that standard. I think that in this case, we saw the failure, pretty much every failure you could possibly have with the system in a perfect, or imperfect situation, that this individual was allowed to leave these places with a resignation letter and really nothing that would flag to say, okay, he just had personal problems. Well, what were the personal problems? Well, the personal problems were more likely that he wasn't successful in his training, but it could be also played off that there was personal problems at home. And it's kind of allowed, and this has been an industry thing for a long time where people are allowed to resign instead of being fired from training. And that can be a problem. And I think that this case highlights that again much more strongly. And it got a little bit further with the way things were recorded in the training records. When you read through some of the training records of different companies, everybody uses their own computer system, their own codes. And if you're an HR person, you're going to have a hard time translating some of these codes. Now, maybe if you're a pilot, experienced pilot, and in the training departments, you might be able to decide what each of these codes are. Some of them might be in some plain language, some of it not. I think that there's definitely an idea here from our perspective, from guys that did the investigation on the pilot side of things, that there needs to be some industry standardization on how things are done and recorded, thinking that there'd be a great deal of benefits so somebody can look at somebody's background and see if they are successful or not. Do they need extra training? Do they need extra monitoring? So maybe you really take a chance on them, but you want to monitor them a little bit more. In this case, we had a person who was on paper okay time-wise, had experience flying jets, complicated jets. He previously flew an Embraer 175, which is a very modern, very capable aircraft. And now we throw him into a 767. And 767 is kind of an interesting aircraft. We think of it as a very modern airplane, and it is not. It is a very old airplane nowadays. This is 1970s early 80s designs. The aircraft that we fly are converted passenger planes in most cases, and they are a hodgepodge of different setups. I think we have 4 or 5 different radios on versions on each of these. Each aircraft's a little bit different. The screens, there's some screens, there's round dials, it's a big mix, and you throw so many into that, and it's an extra bit of challenge. Plus, stepping up into a bigger airplane, a heavy airplane, there's a lot to learn there, and monitoring the training and making sure somebody's really capable of thinking ahead of the aircraft is very important. The step up from a 172 to a Pilatus was probably pretty big for you. The step up from a Embraer 175 to a 767 is a pretty big step. Flight management systems, just the speed and the energy that you have as an aircraft is a very different situation. When I jumped into my current ride, 747, I came from an RJ. Speeds are actually relatively compatible, surprisingly, but the weight is not, and the amount of energy and how the airplane handles is significantly different. It took me a while to feel comfortable with it, and I had to have good training to make sure I could stay up on the systems. So I think what we saw here was somebody that was trained to proficient standards, at least as far as we could tell, but was having problems and probably needed to be monitored. In this case, the company had chosen not to through their system. Now, concurrent with all this was the huge hiring boom. And there was a greater need for more and more pilots. Our company was expanding with the addition of new aircraft particularly for this contract that this crash occurred on. And we were already kind of short with a lot of pilots leaving to go to better paying locations. So we had this huge need to bring in pilots and get them trained. And that was putting greater stress on everything. And I think that they looked to go get a little bit of flexibility in the program, but they chose maybe, personal opinion, maybe not the best path. It's hard to not money on a quarterback an accident when you're investigating the accident, but you do. So the event occurred not because of necessarily the direct training, but more that this person was predisposed to this and wasn't really caught in the training. There wasn't enough monitoring. There wasn't enough review of the person's progress to see, okay, well, he's constantly hanging up. And in this case, the accident itself is the Golden BB event where everything bad aligned up simultaneously with this aircraft. They talk about the go-around switches being triggered, and that was an inadvertent activation. And how that started much, much earlier up. And there was a high workload environment coming in, just like we always do, coming into a larger airport. You're on an arrival, you have to get the weather, you're programming up an FMS to say what runways you're going to land on. In this case, we also had a instrumentation failure reported on the CVR from the FO. The screen's blanked out, which is what we assume. And there's a switch they use to fix that. So there was a proper swap of controls to the captain flying. The first officer takes over the non-flying duties, uses the button, states on the audio that he fixed it, or that's fixed. And there was a runway change and a request for descent and vectors for weather. All this is occurring in this short time period, and a swap back in controls, plus an expedite for descent. So they're trying to fly them in head-to-head with aircraft coming out of the Houston area, but they needed them to go underneath the traffic coming out, so they were expediting descent. And in a large aircraft, the way we do that is we're normally flying at idle on our descents, and we have to use speed brakes or landing gear or something. So normally speed brakes. So he had reached out, put the speed brakes out, and we think what happened is that he's got his hands in the right seat across behind the throttles, and his hand's riding on top of the speed brake handle. And then he has a jostle from the turbulence from the weather that they were going to go through or were going through that time. And we think what happened was that maybe his watch, his wrist, something triggered the go around switch, which is on the sort of the back upper portion of the throttles. And then that puts the power up. Unfortunately, nobody noticed this. There's modes that were being select on the screens that say go around GA on top. That was highlighted by the NTSB. And obviously the power levers are going to move forward. Unfortunately, none of that was caught by him. And we think there just was a high workload environment, maybe looking out the window and not down at their instruments. We think also the captain was most likely probably setting up either his iPad for the new approach or double checking the FMS, so kind of heads down, but not watching the screens. And that first officer didn't catch it. And this airplane was light. That was another big thing. They had selected flaps 1, which is what allowed them to arm it, but they hadn't really slowed down that much. The aircraft never actually stopped descending. It just shallowed its descent, started leveling off, and then this huge power increase happens. The nose is pitching up, and the acceleration is extreme because the airplane is very light, and now you have 106,000 pounds of thrust on an airplane. It's, I'm not sure the exact weight was, but 270,000 pounds, and then now it's off to the races. Mm-hmm. And so we run into semonographic illusion, which is what they talk about in the report. Semonographic illusion, for those who don't know, that lovely term is an acceleration illusion of the inner ear. And if you suddenly get this acceleration, a forward acceleration, it will give your inner ear the sense that you're pitching up. And the perceived pitch angle that the NTSB calculated was somewhere approaching 80 degrees. So his essentially, inner ear gyro tumbled, and he pitched over, saying that they were stalling. There's no other indications of the stall. There's no airspeed issues. When you look at the angle of attack values, there's none of that. We have something we call pitch limit indicators. So that when flaps come out, so as you get closer to the pitch where you might stall, these little bars come down. None of those were there. And he pitches it over, and now, we had almost a 30,000 foot per minute descent rate at one point. Now, the poor captain, as a non-flying pilot, he's supposed to be monitoring stuff. So if I'm gonna look away from you for a second. If you're doing this, say look at your iPad, and all of a sudden now you got to do this. Mm-hmm. Now your head's super tumbled. You've got a first officer who said you're stalling. You're looking at your instruments and you're seeing a lot of nose down, brown on the screen. Airspeed's increasing, and now he starts to try to fight this, but doesn't verbalize what he's doing. And honestly, there's a huge surprise factor, startle event from this. And we're not like the military. We don't train in these environments where you're regularly upset. I think most fighter pilots would say that they go through training, they're going to go through, and they're going to be intentionally put in situations where the aircraft will depart controlled flight, so that they're not caught off guard by that experience. And it's getting thrown around the cockpit is, I won't say secondhand, but not an unusual experience for them. They've been there, but this is not something that's done in the civilian world. We don't train in these acrobatic ways. I'm sure that your acrobatic training was a eye-opening experience the first time. I don't know if did you ever end up departing controlled flight? Yeah. Your eyes probably do one of those.
And, in the course of professional pilot training, you do upset recovery training, but that's, an hour flight time or something like that. So, it exposes you to some of these effects, and you briefly discuss the inner ear fluid and things like that. But doing a full acrobatic course was very, very different than an hour conversation about upset recovery. So,
Yeah, and when this incident occurred, the upset recovery training had not been implemented yet. Mm-hmm. It was on the books, just getting its final I's dotted and T's crossed, and getting ready to go out there. And there was lots of changes to the software of the simulators to allow them to do that. And then there's the other thing is when you actually do the upset recovery training, which I thought was excellent. It was a hoot to be put at a 110-degree nose low attitude at 10,000 feet in a 747, but there's no G factor.
Yeah,
none, and you can't simulate that G factor or these illusions with the current day technology. I believe that there is some technology coming down the road, and there are specific simulators out there that some militaries do use to train for this, but type of illusion. But it's an experience, and we look at the traces on the FDR data, flight data recorder data. The G loading experienced was a long period of negative G's. And for those who don't know about it, I mean, once you start going to less than 0 G, your blood starts to go the other direction. It starts to go up here. It's not a comfortable position. It would be kind of equivalent to hanging upside down on a pole, like a kid swing around on, and then trying to fly an airplane while you're kind of floating in your seatbelts, maybe banging your head against the panel above you. So we see actions where the captain made controlled movements. We have a split elevator. So on a commercial airplanes, the elevators will split. Either you pull a handle and manually split them, or in this case, Boeing has a spring-loaded clutch sort of setup, where if you apply 70 pounds of 70 pounds of force, it will split. And that's what we saw that had occurred. So nose down on the or the first officer side, nose up on the captain's side, and then that does nothing. It cancels each other out. We see a little bit of roll movement in it because there's essentially like ailerons in the back of the airplane now because we have one up, one down. So that's we see the actions, and then when they do pop out of the clouds, then they both go to both full up, and they end up pulling over 4 Gs in a 767 with the flaps out.
Yeah.
Now, as a testament to Boeing's strength and why I love Boeing's, the plane didn't break until it hit the water.
Yeah.
It stayed together with 4+ Gs with the flaps out. Well, I would say Boeing engineers designed well in excess of their requirements in this case. And so they were starting to recover, but there was just not enough time. And I think that what you have is a cognitive lockup on the first officer's side. When somebody gets under a super amount of stress, sometimes the people's brains will just shut down. You have certainly on the captain's side, a huge stress event and a much greater narrowing of focus. So you're not going to see as much as you would under normal circumstances when you're under high deal of stress. That's why when you go through training in the military, they run you through simulations of being shot at. I'm sure you've been shot at. Mm-hmm. You might have been shot at for real, but you went through training beforehand to desensitize yourself. Same thing in this flying experiences, the desensitization through the flight training. And I just don't think there was enough experience in there. And I'm not saying that it needed to be experienced, but there wasn't enough experience to overcome that initial gap. And he sees, okay, I got to fix this nose low thing. And the rest of it got cut out as he was trying to save the aircraft, but too little time in this case. It was the whole
accident. The whole accident sequence began at about just over 6,000 feet, right? And then all of this happened fairly quickly in IMC until they broke out underneath.
Yeah, when we look at the map did our math on the traces. From the time that the nose was pitched over to the time the plane was into the ground was 18 seconds.
Wow.
And, you figure 5 to 10 seconds to recover from a startle experience. And I don't think even if we think in about 6 to 8 seconds, they started to receive recovery from the captain's side. But we don't, our opinion, and I'm not a technical engineering expert. I'm not a flight test engineer or anything like that, but I don't think there's enough time or altitude to make that work. It's not an F-16. It's a large transport category aircraft, and it takes time and space to recover. When we do stalls in a normal experience, we can lose 2,000-3,000 feet, and this was well in excess of that in terms of descent rates.
Yeah.
So
at the end of the day, as far as takeaways, right, which is the reason we do investigations, it's so we can disseminate the information, get lessons learned. As we can see, recommendations have already been considered by the FAA. So looking back on the whole thing, do you think we're going to have a couple takeaways? So Colgan Air, like you mentioned it. Now, in the industry, we just know it as Colgan, right? There was this one accident that really changed the face of pilot qualifications, we'll call it, amongst other things, crew rest and some other things. But do you think, I guess kind of a two-part question. One, would this be different had there been passengers? And two, do you think this will be an event which will spur positive change in the FAA?
Yeah, I think it is. I'll go in reverse order. So has it spurred positive change in FAA? Yes. There's a NPRM for the pilot record database that has been issued finally after more than a decade when it was supposed to originally have been required to have been put into action. There's been one in testing for a long time. There's still problems with that notice of proposal rulemaking. It's going to create an entire new regulation set for all certificated operations, public operators, so people that operate on behalf of the government, and larger flight departments, which I think they set the bar pretty low at 2 airplanes, but that is that's going to increase the amount of recording of data. Now, that should, in theory, help out with hiring, and that will also maybe make companies be a little bit better about their data keeping and record keeping and how they monitor stuff. There are a lot of challenges with the system, and the big change I think we'll see really is with this event is a much keener eye in the hiring practices of companies. I think you have the big guys, the Acmes and the Acme Norse and whatever the other names were that other show uses. That they have various levels of, we kind of jokingly call them astronaut testing programs, but there's some logic to it. And when you come down to some of the smaller operators, it's just not feasible to run these large operations of all this testing, not necessarily feasible to do simulator testing, because simulators, while cheaper than an airplane, are not cheap. They're very expensive time to use a full motion simulator. But it's going to much keener eye on the person's background and their training progress, and I think hopefully in the training programs that they're going to be monitored to a much greater level. I think that's an important part of the big takeaway of this. Should you be worried if this is a passenger airplane? Would this have been a lot different? Oh my God, yes. It would have been. This would not have been, back page news even when the MAX crash happened right afterwards. Mm-hmm. It would have been big because it's a big airplane, and you would have had probably 250, 300 people on this plane if it had been loaded up. And that's a one sad aspect of aviation is that most of our regulations are written in blood. And in the case of cargo, there's not a lot of blood there. It's only the pilot's blood that gets spilled. One of the things that was brought up in the investigation during some of the videos part of it was the rest aspect of it. Now, we can't point any direct fingers at rest here in this particular case, mostly because of lack of data, but the schedules and cargo operations oftentimes flip back and forth. It's not just FedEx's operation where it's all night. We're a day-night operation. You know, my flights usually involve day and night all in one flight. So you're reversing your time of day you're operating, say, and we do 24-hour rest. So it sounds good on paper, a 24-hour rest, but that means you're going to work when you went to sleep the night before. So now you got to try and cram 2 sleeps in a 24-hour period and show up rested. It's a challenge. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it can't be done. It takes almost effort and professional sleeping skills that my wife just dislikes incredibly from my perspective, because I can pretty much stop and fall asleep at any point in time during a day if I choose to. But I've literally trained myself almost to do that.
Yeah.
And it's hard on your body and hard on your mental acuity. And if you're suffering from fatigue, especially a long-term fatigue, it does really affect your mental ability. You know, as we were talking before we started doing the interview side of this, I'm coming off of having a lot of days off between vacation and getting some time off because of being out on the road for so long because of the COVID stuff. And I've noticed great change in my mental acuity and wakefulness and all that in the last couple of weeks because I've been on a regular schedule, sleeping normally in the same time zone on the same continent for a long time. And I think that if that gets looked at a little bit more too, and maybe that we get a single set of rules for cargo and passengers out of this eventually, which I wish they made that recommendation, but you know, that's a big ask in this world environment. Yeah. Maybe we'd see some improvements on the whole thing, but you know, passengers, rightfully so, they're going to get more scrutiny. There's a lot more lives at risk. But you know, this incident could have taken out hundreds of lives on the ground, but for a few seconds time difference. It hit the water and missed a wonderful town in Texas, Anahuac, and I have to give a big shout out to Anahuac because the people of Anahuac and that surrounding communities were incredible for us during the investigation. The sheriff there, Sheriff Hawthorne, was super in terms of communicating information to us because he was responsible for the recovery efforts of the bodies of our lost pilots. Yeah, and it's a hard thing for us, but a right thing to do. So again, a huge shout out to that town and that county down there for helping us out.
Yeah, that's great. I remember seeing him on the initial press conferences, and it's one of these things that it's almost like a movie set, isn't it? Where you have a small town with a major national level event like that.
Absolutely. The sheriff was your best classic movie set Texas sheriff. Cowboy boots, perfectly polished, big wide cowboy belt, the hat, and just cool. This is just a cool cat coming in the door, and he just walked in and he owned the place, and he looked the part, acted the part, he was the part. So again, I mean, he was amazing in terms of what he did with us. I mean, he was great about communicating to us as the individual, as the pilot representatives there in the investigation, giving us a specific, updates just to us before he get to the public briefings when we had these closed briefings. And, they were incredible people there, and in the community groups out there also, they all stepped up. They had this huge influx of people coming in to do this investigation and recovery efforts, and they were fighting over one another to who's going to bring out food to us. And when you get gumbo on the Texas Gulf Coast, it's a good thing.
It's the real deal.
And it's amazing. It's amazing when it comes out in like 25-gallon barrels out of the back of a pickup truck, and that's just one of the multiple ones they brought over to the site. So, but anyways, I mean, there were some amazing things, amazing aspects to this accident, but the very hard experience overall, and something I think we can talk about on a different time.
Yeah, at a later point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know one of the highlights of my career was getting to go to the NTSB offices where they analyzed the cockpit voice recorders and the flight data recorders. I was working on a project that was basically an audio enhancement tool that the military was going to share with the NTSB to make them more effective at analyzing those recorders. And I got to see some of the rooms in Washington, D.C. where these investigations take place. But it really is a team effort. And I've said this a couple times, I think, on the podcast, but an investigation of something like this, in your case, you were representing the union. I mean, it is a whole team that coalesces together, from aircraft manufacturer to aircraft component manufacturers to the airline or the operator itself to federal agents, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. When we walked into this, when I found out about the accident, I was actually not too far away from where I'm at here in my attic recording studios in the lowlands of Netherlands. And I flew across over there and got off an airplane and watched the NTSB press briefing, the first press briefing, and then walked into the command post briefing immediately afterwards. And that was overwhelming because you have the FBI there every single time there's an accident. You had state, local authorities all there, fire department, local police and sheriffs. Then you had General Electric, you had Boeing, you had, and not General Electric was one person. Boeing had multiple people there. Rockwell Collins, one of the main manufacturers for components, was there, and Atlas was there with multiple people that representing the airline. And you have this huge stuff, and then as you go further into the investigation, then you start going even further and deeper into these component manufacturers. So manufacturers of the servos for the hydraulic units and stuff, those were all involved in later parts of the investigation. And all come together in this huge effort to put this all together. It's all being orchestrated by the NTSB. And in regards to your audio enhancement tool, it was used on here, I think. As I know, they did some audio enhancement on the CVR to pull out some of the particular sounds, because our CVR representative had to go back up and listen to some new stuff and concur with some of the findings they had done up there. So yeah, it's a huge effort, and honor to work with these people. They're really neat and amazing people up there that work for the NTSB, and they brought in people from all around the country, from different offices to support it at different points in time. I mean, there's people that, they're like Rain Man for airplane parts. It's amazing. I look at this piece of sheet metal and go, oh, that's from this section to this section on the airplane. How do you know that? Well, because it's this thickness and this separation of rivets. Okay.
Wow.
I eventually learned these skills.
Yeah.
But it's mind blowing when you walk into these things, that how smart these people are, and really an honor to work with all different parties involved. And I was what we call a party coordinator. Yeah. So I headed up my group. So I kind of ran my little 3-ring circus inside the large 3-ring circus, and mostly just stepped in to help out where I could. And it's quite an experience to see all this different stuff moving. And then when you start getting reports, when the final reports come out, stuff that you see in the docket, and you read some of the stuff, and you're like, wow, okay, there's a lot of effort and smartness there going on that's far and above my skill level. So We appreciate all the work that was done.
All right, John, I think that's a good stopping point. I know this was difficult for you. We've been talking since the day it happened, actually, about this. Yeah. I wanted to reach out and make sure that everybody in both your actual family and then your work family was doing all right. But I'm sure these folks were lucky to have you as part of the team, and I've known you for quite. I
was lucky to have them.
There we go. An absolutely amazing bit, wasn't it? That's, so much to take from that. Interestingly enough, now Mike was saying, sort of, Nev, Matt, when they have, when this has been done, is like explain the process of audio enhancement. So it's a way of doing the.
I think it's when they had the cockpit CVR, Matt, is when they're trying to enhance the sound quality so they can hear in detail more what's going on the flight deck. So obviously for the show, you do a lot of work with the audio and the sound quality. And I think what Mike is pointing at is what kind of programs or software or things can you use to enhance audio?
Yeah, it's mainly filters, essentially. That's one of the things that you're trying to do. You're trying to isolate. Isolate is probably the best way to do that. I'm not sure. There's John, I'm going to ask you to stop talking for a minute, if that's okay, because I'm not sure you're coming out of the source you think you're coming out of. There's a few hiccups with like filtering and stuff is something that I was going to sort of talk about. Really, as I say, enhancing is literally that, where you're trying to like take out any background noises or things like that. Where to amplify, if you like, so it's a way of amplifying. So you take out as much background noise as you can, and then increase the volume. Essentially, is probably the best way to describe it. There's a much more technical way of describing it. It's and unfortunately we've lost Nev, but he may be able to explain it slightly better than me.
Actually, Matt, one of the things that our very kind Patreons enabled us to get is sitting in front of you in the studio, which is in itself an audio enhancing device, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just to be fair, the Focusrite box is more of a quality interface between the PC and these. It's a glorified sound card.
Gets rid of all the
you
noises.
Don't really. Yeah, I mean, it's not. That's not really prevalent to what this is. But Armando said in our little group chat that you can answer Micah's question in much more detail next week. So Armando will be able to give you a more accurate description of that, as I say. But in a rough nutshell, it's all about filtering out background noise, and then you can pick out the bits. You're looking at the waveform basically and picking out the bits that are more prevalent to what you're trying to listen to. But
a massive thanks, I should say, a massive thanks to John and Armando for putting that together, because it was absolutely brilliant. Me and Matt and all the crew had the chance to listen to this earlier in the week, and it's really, really good. So big thanks to John and Armando for putting that together.
Very much so, yeah, absolutely. Some other things in the pipework coming up soon, hopefully, so we look forward to those as well. Competition, Carlos, just remind them very quickly, because we've only got a week left, haven't we? Before,
it is literally a week, and whilst we've been on the air, we've had another entrant sent entrance into the competition, so big thanks to you for that, Chris Marsh. You've got between now and next week, episode 330, to send us in that piece of feedback about aviation in your life. Could be anything from a short story about how your first delve into aviation, or something that has really inspired you or you've seen in aviation and thought, that's amazing. Put it pen to paper, or email, I should say, or send us an audio or voice message.
We don't mind what it is. We don't mind. We don't mind how we receive it. If email is fine, and we'll read it out on your behalf. So if you're not feeling confident in doing it, there's no excuse. And there is an incredible £150 plane reclaimers voucher that is up,
which is awesome,
grabs, and it is available to. They'll ship anywhere in the world. So it is literally it's available to everyone to use. So do write in by email. Say podcast@planetalkinguk.com. That's podcast@planetalkinguk.com for your entries. You can send like an audio file, for example. You could do a voice memo and record it using the voice memo thing in WhatsApp, and the WhatsApp number is +44 757 22 49166. That's +44 757 22 49166. Also, the form on our website allows you to upload a file to us as well now, so you can also use the form on the website. Take yourself to www.planetalkinguk.com and there's a contact us page. Take yourself there. You can do it there.
And you can go on that website when you win that voucher, if you win the voucher, and purchase yourself an entire row of economy class seats with everything, the armrests, everything.
Yeah, literally anything. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, it's so
nobody
good.
Panic, as they say. It's good. Look, it's time to wrap up, mate. So let's get that done. It's sorry, I missed that. John said something in my ear there, and
yeah, we've got coming up on next week's show. For those of you who may have heard of a certain Plane Crazy Down Under podcast,
yes, back in
next
the day.
Week's show. We have got Grant and Steve, and they had a chat with Matt this week.
They did.
And that's coming up on next week's show, which is going to be awesome.
Many of us miss Plane Crazy Down Under, and of course that has unfortunately been retired. But there are some exciting new projects in the work, essentially, and they'll tell us all about what they've been working on and what they've been up to, and also what lockdown is like in Australia as well. And that made for some interesting listening as well. But very excited to be joined by Steve, because we don't hear from Steve very often. We hear from Grant, which is awesome. But it was so great to have a chat with Steve. And in fact, actually after the call, myself and Steve were talking for so long afterwards.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. The guy, seriously, if you need, I'll tell you what, talking about audio enhancement, if you need anybody's help doing a podcast,
have you seen his studio?
Man. I know, it's incredible.
Steve's studio is amazing.
I had a guided tour, my friend. I had a guided tour of his amazing studio. But yeah, it's a really good chat. We've got that to play out next week. Really looking forward to it.
So, social media links before we finish. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Search for us on the social medias, Plane Talking UK. Also, don't forget that WhatsApp number, +44 757 22 49166. And that won't wake me up at 3 a.m. in the morning. And you can also email the show, podcast@planetalkinguk.com. And don't forget to take yourselves over to our website, allaws.planetalkinguk.com. You can go on there, look on the store. You can buy yourself a PTUK T-shirt. We've got nice fresh new ones in which are all amazing, so you can go on yourself and buy a T-shirt. You can also buy yourself a mug. Someone has been and actually brought a mug actually this week.
They have, yes. Richard Adams has bought one today.
Yes, brought a mug. You can buy yourself a mug, and don't forget as well, there are the links on our website to do your shopping on Amazon, which I'm sorry, Matt, I've only done it once this week, but there we go. You can also become a Patreon of the show and help us to put out the content we do each week by becoming a Patreon and donating anything from $1 to, well, whatever you find down the back of the sofa, really. So you can click on the links there. And also the PayPal link, if you want to make a one-time donation, you can also click on the PayPal link, which is also fantastically amazing. So
thanks also to Jack, who joined us at the top of the show. If you want to follow his journey, shall we say, on Instagram, he's also on Twitter as well. Basically, search for Jack Jenner Hall. Instagram, it's @Jack_Jenner_Hall. So, as I say, Jack Jenner Hall, all with underscores in between those words. And as I say, if you search for Jack Jenner Hall on Twitter, you'll find it very easily, because the tap on the strapline on his thing does actually say the Norfolk Gliding Club. So you'll find it. You'll know you found the right guy.
So a big thanks to everyone who's joined us in the YouTube chat room tonight. Thank you for joining us tonight. And a big thanks as well to everyone who downloads the show as an audio podcast. And don't forget, if you do through iTunes, give us a little review on there, because that would be amazing. So that is where we're going to bring episode number 329 of the show to a close. Big thanks to all our guests. Big thanks to Nev for joining us as well. A big thanks to Matt, and a big thanks to Armando for sending his military in. And also not forgetting a huge thanks to our producer John for all his hard work this week. So from me, Carlos, here in my PTUK home studio, and Matt over in the master PTUK studios. Have a great weekend, and
take care, everyone. See you later. Bye bye.